I'm Mary Beth Stapleton, Manager of Family and Community Partnerships for Hartford County Public Schools. Thank you for joining us today for the Parent Academy Real Talk on Social Media 101. Today I'm honored to have Mr. Brad Spence and Dr. Paula Stanton. Thank you both for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Good to have you both here, and this is a really challenging topic for parents, so we're really excited to have you both here. Brad, could you just introduce yourself to parents, what your role is, and we'll just get your background.
My name is Brad Spence. I am currently the assistant principal at Havre de Grace Middle High School. I've been in the county for approximately 20 years. I'm a graduate of Hartford County Public Schools, and some of you may have seen me on some of the fun videos we had during the COVID shutdown.
The last one was the computer that fell down the steps.
Yeah.
That was great.
So.
Very creative, thanks. Dr. Stanton.
And I am Paula Stanton, Supervisor of Equity and Cultural Proficiency. I've been in the district for about 10 years, and I was previously a teacher. I taught here in the county for most of my time here, and then I've been in this role for the last 2 years.
Great. Well, thank you both for being here. And as I said, this is a topic that parents talk about and, to be honest, don't know what they don't know. So we really want to get the information out there, primarily for our secondary parents, middle through high school, but we also know that some of our elementary school students are getting smartphones as well, and just making sure our parents are fully equipped to support that. So speaking as a parent, Mr. Spence, what are you seeing with social media? What are the sites that kids are on right now primarily?
So social media is an ever-shifting environment of what students are using. Majority right now at the secondary level especially, we're seeing a lot of TikTok. We see a lot of Instagram still, and Snapchat is being used incredibly for more of a communication device than a social media platform. Snapchat's being used as almost a text platform.
Okay.
But we are seeing that is the majority of the areas where kids are focusing their energy for social media. Now, with anything in technology and the internet, new things pop up here and there, and they're popular for a couple weeks or a couple months or a while, but these are the standards that kids are falling back to, is the Instagram and the TikTok and the Snapchat.
So for the Instagram, it's mostly pictures. And then the Snapchat is conversation, and then the TikTok are videos, right?
Correct. TikTok started as really funny dancing videos. It's really evolved over the past year or so, especially with everyone being home so much, to almost being a micro vlogging site. They've moved up to about 3-minute videos where kids can really, and anyone can sit there and speak to the camera. And with all of these social media aspects, there are the front-facing aspect with Instagram posting pictures and videos, and TikTok posting the funny videos. But behind the scenes, there's also all of these have the direct message capabilities, which we're also seeing a lot of nefarious behavior occurring more in the direct message, where it's not necessarily public-facing, but that's where the communication is going and where some of the more seedy things are happening.
So to talk about those concerning elements to this, I know in many positive ways, our children have fun, enjoy, connect. This is all good, but we all know there's a downside to this as well. And so what you're seeing in the schoolhouse could be negative consequences of what you're seeing on the TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat. So to speak about that, are you hearing there's these challenges that are coming out, negative challenges to students to actually basically misbehave during the school day, correct?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
What are you hearing?
So I'm hearing a lot of challenges that require them to inappropriately touch other people, to tear things out of bathrooms and things like that. And a lot of those things that they're doing violate our bullying and harassment policy and also our student code of conduct. So we are advising students not to engage in those behaviors in school or otherwise, frankly.
Okay, and if they do engage in the behavior, are they filming themselves and then putting it out there? What are they getting from it, I guess?
So they're looking for what's called clout. They're looking for that popularity, that notoriety. So they are filming it some. Some are just doing it to do it and saying, look what I got, look what I did. The beginning of the school year was difficult with some of these social media challenges that we were facing, policing what was going on. But again, social media trends come and go so quickly. It was kind of interesting to see that this was occurring, and our older students started to realize how destructive and non-productive these things were and started to police themselves a little bit. And that slowly trickled down through our lower grades as we move forward. We are seeing some of that pullback now, which has been great. Through education and communication, as an assistant principal in the building, it took a lot of time having conversations with students how, this was not how we act, this is not what we do, and really leveraging that positive peer pressure amongst students to say, we need to take care of our building, we need to take care of each other, and we don't need to do these type of things.
Well, and that always does seem to be the most impactful way of approaching these situations is when you have peer-to-peer outreach, kids talking to kids about it. That's a great approach. And we're hearing that across the country. I think that when kids talk to kids and do it in a positive way rather than negative, it works out. Thinking about that positive versus negative experience again, Dr. Stanton, with the social media, I know we hear over and over again about that cyberbullying piece. And again, concerns that happen in the home. We hear parents say, my child seemed fine, and then all of a sudden they're crying hysterically because something's come up on an Instagram or in other venues. What is happening? What do you see, and how do you define cyberbullying versus just a little bit of a spat between friends?
All right. So cyberbullying is electronic communication. It's negative electronic communication, where the behaviors cross the line into making someone feel bad about their appearance or unfairly talking about someone's sexual orientation or gender identity or race or whatever their individual factors might be. And they use social media to kind of do that. And they do that through TikTok and Facebook and all other sorts of social media. And the problem with that is, well, it's problematic because when it enters the schoolhouse, it disrupts the orderly operation of a school. And so even when those behaviors are happening off-site, at home, on the weekend, once they come into the school, then we have to address it. And our students just don't understand that even if you're playing around at home and you think it's funny, it's going to impact students at school. And if it does, then we have to make sure that that's not happening because we have a very strict, I would say, and a very serious bullying and harassment policy that we want all of our students to abide by.
So if a parent has a concern and they really do want to report a situation, what's the first step?
The first step is to report it immediately, and that's for parents, students. We have a website that they can go to hcps.org, and they can click on the link to the bullying and harassment form, and they can report it right then. They can also report it by calling the school and alerting anyone at the school, whether it's an administrator, a teacher, or whomever. Okay. We want to make sure that people are reporting it because a lot of times what we're finding is they just don't report it.
Right, and the other thing that I think parents need to know is even if your child wasn't the one to start the bullying, if they push it or share it or do anything with it, that's part of the concern, right?
Exactly,
Okay.
Because liking a comment or sharing it with someone can be considered also bullying behavior, and so we want students to not do that. We want them instead to be upstanders, to either report it to someone at school, report it to their parent, and have them report it to the school. We want the behavior to be stopped immediately.
Well, again, it sounds like you're engaging children to be a part of the solution, which is what we want to be doing in the schoolhouse. Well, thank you both so much for this information, and I'm sure it's really equipping parents to help make sure it's a positive experience during the school day and at home and in the community. So thank you both.
Thank you.
So today we're very honored to have with us Mr. Donovan Brooks and Mr. Joe Dugan, who are both experts in safety and security, and I'll ask them both to give a bit of their background. So I'll start with you, Mr. Brooks.
I am a 23-year retired school police officer, and I've been in this position now as Chief of Safety and Security for Harford County Public Schools for 3.5 years, where I've done a lot of training around school safety, adolescent safety and security, and strategies for parents keeping our students safe.
Excellent. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Joe, Mr. Dugan.
My name's Joe Dugan with the Maryland State Police now. I have almost 40 years law enforcement experience, 25 years Baltimore City, 12 years here with the Harford County Sheriff's Office. Last 3 years I've been retired and working for the Maryland State Police as an internet safety specialist. So pretty much I go into the community, any place somebody will let me talk and teach internet safety to parents and children.
So let's talk internet safety. We know as parents that there is a lot going on right now with our children and our teens that we may we may not be clear about, right? We don't understand it all the time. So from your view, what concerning behaviors are you seeing on the internet that our children and teens might be participating in Harford County?
Well, the biggest thing we're seeing, and probably the biggest problem children are creating for themselves, is the sharing of images. And when I talk about sharing of images, we're talking about nude images, illegal images. It is just a problem that can haunt them for the rest of their lives. And they're sharing these images over multiple platforms, whether it be Instagram is a big one. And what I just found out this morning, Twitter is now being used to share these images, where the kids are sharing a Dropbox over Twitter. Again, we've had cases here just in Harford County where we've investigated where these images of these children now reside in image software sites, software sharing sites or image sharing sites based out of the Soviet Union. And we will never, ever get those images back. Oh, and that's one of the biggest things we work in as law enforcement is trying to recover those images and trying to protect the children from poor decisions they're making.
Understood. And so that one instant of bad choice could just stay
Yes.
with them for a very long time.
Yes.
And Mr. Brooks, from your view, in addition to the images, are there other concerning behaviors that you're seeing that are impacting the schoolhouse, which is your purview?
Yeah, so because we went such a long period of time with what would be considered some level of social isolation with our students, what we found is there was a lot of idle time and a lot of time for, conflicts to develop between students over social media. And what we're seeing coming back into the school building is some of these conflicts that started as social media or internet conflicts. Now these students are back in the same buildings with one another. So we have to deal sometimes with a motivation to settle the score that started on social media, started on an internet platform, because now they're back in. Another thing that we've seen is cyberbullying, which was talked about in an earlier segment. Being able to hide behind a computer board and just kind of say anything you want to say without filters, without thought of consequence. But at some point, a lot of times these things come to bear and they manifest themselves in real life when the person now wants to confront another person. Mm-hmm. Shaming, body shaming, gender shaming, whatever it is, So we've seen some of those aspects of social media. And I want to say that social media has its benefits for a lot of our young people. I mean, young people can log on to social media. They can find opportunities to volunteer and earn service learning hours. They can do that through social media platforms. They can connect with their peers. Most importantly, what we saw is during the pandemic, they can connect with their teachers, because guess what? There was a lack of resources, tangible, touchable resources during the pandemic. So I don't want to say it's all gloom and doom, because there are some positive aspects when social media is managed. And a little later, we can talk about how parents can really help in that process on the positive side.
Right, and let's actually talk about that now. So this, as a parent, I'm hearing you talk and I'm thinking, so how do you manage? It feels, in my view, it feels like you're holding back the ocean. Like you really just are so overwhelmed and you don't really know where to start. So from your professional opinion, where do you start as a parent? What do you do?
Well, as a parent, you need to educate yourself. I mean, you said it earlier, parents don't know what they don't know.
Right.
Well, part of that process, you can't talk to your child about internet safety if you don't know about internet safety. And a lot of these internet safety rules that we talk about apply to parents also. One of the first things you run into with the internet is just a total loss of privacy. But that doesn't affect just our children, it affects us as parents. We talked about the sharing imagery. That doesn't just affect our children, it affects the adults also, because they're running afoul of the system, sharing images. Mr. Brooks brought up a great point earlier about how our children during the pandemic were sort of locked in. Their only access to the world was through the internet. And we saw that as a lot of the investigative leads we get in the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force come through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, where they run a cyber tip line. it's this tip line that you can call into as a parent, or our electronic service providers are required by law, anything they see online, to report to the cyber tip line. That gets reported to law enforcement agencies. In 2019, the Maryland State Police saw 3,200 of these cyber tips come through. That's an actual investigation that some officer somewhere in the state of Maryland here has to investigate. Last year during the pandemic, we saw almost 6,000, and we will be over 6,000 this year probably. And that's just because our children are spending more time online and getting bored, going into those websites we wouldn't want them to do, or maybe too much private time, sharing images with each other, or getting into the bullying situation because they have too much time on their hands. So if we as parents can be aware of, the internet is a great, like you said, it's overwhelmingly a great resource for our children as far as education, socialization, even the gaming and entertainment. It's just that small little dark corner, that small little problematic corner that we just need to educate ourselves on. And to me, that's the biggest safety rule out there, is just educate yourself.
So part of the education would be knowing what the sites are, knowing what they're doing on the sites.
Well, yeah. So I think that one of the things we have to really focus on is the engagement and the involvement of parents with their children when it comes to social media and the internet. There was one study that came out of Australia like last year, and it talked about on surveys where about 60% of parents were found not to engage in monitoring or overseeing activity of their children on the internet and social media. So I would say, when we start to talk about strategies for parents as we, approach this topic, one, I think it needs to start with just a basic conversation. Talking to your child about, social media, learning what their interests are, and as Joe said, when we get into educating ourselves, if we aren't that tech savvy or what have you, like, make it enjoyable for your child to sit down and show you what they like, what areas that they like to go to, what type of content they're interested in, and try to make this a quality time activity where you're really starting to gain useful information about not only what your child likes, but what they have potentially been exposed to. So it also becomes teachable moments for parents when they see certain content, and if their child doesn't necessarily have a full understanding of what they've been exposed to, then now, instead of that child continuing down this course of learning what they're learning either through peers or social media, you have an opportunity to take corrective action at that point when you're seeing that. So I think that, being able to talk about, the fun things on there, but parents cannot be afraid to talk about the things that can create harm, because what we also find is that students innocently, sometimes unknowingly, they give away home address information. They're filming things, and in the background it's giving away geographic details. There could be a street sign or something. And so we need to be aware that there are people out there that comb these sites that have nefarious intentions, right? So we have to also it's an opportunity for us to teach our kids how to also protect themselves, because even though it's about internet safety and social media safety, we don't want that to lead to also having to be concerned about our physical safety, because we've given certain key indicators about our personal demographics online. And this happens sometimes with students, and especially when we were in that isolation period during the pandemic, right? We saw a lot of uptick in attempts and successes with grooming and recruiting young people into the human traffic trade, which extends and has tentacles in all kinds of things, labor and sex and all these other things. So we really need to also educate, as much as we need our kids to sometimes educate us on the technology, we need to educate our kids on the consequences of exposure and being out on the social media.
So to that point, if a parent does engage with their child, starts to see some concerning behavior that they weren't aware of, right? What are some things they can do to start healing that? If there has been behavior they weren't aware of. What do they do if they see an image was shared or some kind of site they were on? Where do you start?
The first thing to do is talk to your child. Find out, hey, where did this come from? Remember, lots of times they're the victim. You know, we don't always think about that. You know, a child, especially if they accidentally, say, end up on a website we wouldn't want them at, or they run afoul of a predator. You know, lots of times their go-to punishment for their children when they have a problem on the internet is to take their device away from them.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Well, the problem
Yeah.
is you take that device away from them, and they're going to come back to you the next time with a problem because you just took their lifeline away from them. Again, there needs to be a sanction because they went someplace they shouldn't have went. But we also need to consider them a victim and treat them like the victims they are.
Understood.
Because no child wants to be the predator of a victim of a predator. But sometimes, you know, they will go into a website, they'll talk to somebody they don't know, even though we've told them don't do that. You mentioned grooming. The early stages of grooming is nothing more than becoming a friend. And once that predator has developed that friendship, it's easy for them now to start asking the difficult questions because now the child doesn't want to lose this friendship. And so when they start asking for images, when they start asking personal information, the child is reluctant, but will lots of times surrender that information. The best advice I can give a parent is just be a part of the child's life.
Sure.
On the internet and off the internet. And we will get them through this problem we call the teenage years.
And it can't be a one-time or two-time conversation that's visited.
Okay.
Because social media and access to social media is constant and consistent. Those conversations between parents and children have to be constant and consistent. And that's why it's so important to make it an inclusive, fun activity, because what it also does is it helps to continue to build trust, right? Because there are different levels of trust between people. And that includes parents and children. As you stated earlier, sometimes they don't want you to know, it's okay if you know I'm doing this, but I really don't want to. So you have to build, and here's the reason that trust is really, really important. Because you don't want your child to trust someone out in cyberland more than they trust you. Because if they do, they will share more information with the folks that are out there that could be whoever behind those keyboards than they would share with you. So it's very important that we think about several things. We think about the psychologically safe spaces for our students when they're on the internet, but they got to have a psychological safe space when communicating with us too. They have to feel psychologically safe to be able to talk about what they want to talk about, to be able to talk about what they may have been exposed to or confronted with or propositioned with, right? They have to feel comfortable about that. Inclusion, right? So they have to feel included in decision-making about their use of social media, right? And so parents have to determine what that inclusion looks like, but parents have to also make sure that they are included in this conversation and in the activity itself.
Right.
Of social media, right? And then to be able to talk about consequences, and not just punitive consequences, but consequences of becoming a victim and what that looks like.
Well, and it sounds like that world of cyber is manageable as long as you're intentional and focused and you can make it fun and engaging with your child. Make it to be a bonding experience for your child to build that trust and that relationship. So I appreciate your time and your expertise, and it's good to know folks out there are supporting our parents and working to keep us safe and just really keeping the community safe. So thank you both for your time and effort.
You're quite welcome.
And thank you for joining the Parent Academy Real Talk. And remember, Harford County's parents are our children's first and best teachers. We'll see you next time.